Back on SportsCenter with breaking news. A very busy day for Shams Charania. And Shams, we thought it would be mostly team options, player options, free agency. But I understand you have news involving an NBA free agent, but of a more serious sort. What's going on?
This is a serious development for one of the NBA's top free agents right now. Sources tell me the U.S. District Attorney's Office is investigating Detroit Pistons guard Malik Beasley on allegations of gambling on NBA games and prop bets. I'm told it was during allegedly the 2023-2024 season. I have a quote from Beasley's attorney, Steve Haney. He said, an investigation is not a charge. Malik is afforded the same right of the presumption of innocence as anyone else under the U.S. Constitution. As of now, he has not been charged with anything. I am told, though, that Beasley and the Pistons were in serious talks on finalizing a 3-year, $42 million contract that would have brought Beasley back to Detroit. But now those talks are on pause. Talks around the league, likely on pause for Malik Beasley as well.
And there was an incident back in 2020 for which Beasley did serve some jail time. I know it's not germane that it's related, but you start talking accruals and free agency and off-court risk. Those things come into play. Shams, thanks so much. We'll be back with you as the stories continues to develop.
5-minute pod. It's 1 o'clock on the East Coast Sunday. And as we're kind of finding out, Malik Beasley... Well, like it's funny. I think Trey was the first. Trey Crosby was the first tweet that I said, leading toward a greater conspiracy. Greater conspiracies are fun regarding Malik Beasley. It's fun to think of him as some deep state Malikchurian candidate. He's gambling on basketball some kind of way. Allegedly. So what's interesting about this, right? So we can go down the list. Somebody more interested can go down all the game logs now. I feel like a lot of people. So here's kind of where I'm at with this. I feel like a lot of people disagree with me on this part of things. But if there was some bit of paperwork or some like magic bullet, if there was some Zapruder tape that showed that the Bucks weren't losers on balance, like I wouldn't believe it, because we all kind of felt like the Bucks are losers, and the Pacers winning the championship wouldn't have taken away from that feeling of the Bucks being losers, and the Bucks winning in 2021 wouldn't have taken that away. Now, of course, there's shades of gray with all this kind of stuff. Sometimes people can rise to the occasion, but like so a lot of people are like, I would imagine, kind of jumping toward this proves everything. That's not really interesting to me. That's kind of fun, but that's not really the interesting part. This was all just so foreseeable with the gambling thing. Full disclosure, I don't gamble, but not to be on a moral high ground for whoever who's listening to this who perhaps does. This was just very foreseeable, because if every single person who's listening to this right now has at some point in their life felt like I doom scroll too much on my phone. I use my phone too much. I opened that app and I closed it and I reopened it again compulsively, right? Like all these systems are designed to make us more compulsive. They're designed to do that intentionally, obviously. Now add gambling to that. Or add any other vice to that. Everybody's walking around with a thing in their pocket where they can basically get whatever, have whatever done to them, have whatever brought to them, buy whatever. We're all familiar with that. So it would be ridiculous. What is it, 400 some people in NBA or whatever the number is? Extrapolate that out to all sports. And also with our kind of common understanding of mental health and people who have compulsive disorders and what makes something a disorder and just a weakness, all this other kind of stuff. There's no way that one person out of 100 isn't going to be too weak for large sums of money or small sums of money to break that, right? There's just no way. So one person out of 100, if there's 400 people in the NBA, is four people, and it's probably way more than that, because it's probably way more than 100. It's probably like 10%, right? And it's not so much about the money, but also these, as we learned with Michael Jordan and with everything else, and Pete Rose, these are just the most competitive people in the world. So if you're Pete Rose and you're a degenerate, or if you're Michael Jordan and you're just so great at everything, you just love competing with everybody, and the things that you're great at, like basketball and athletic sports, and the things that you may not be great at, like cards and golf, and like for him, again, the action is the juice. Always having some action is the juice. In the same way that you might enjoy just being caffeinated all day because it makes you just feel electrified all day with your Red Bull or whatever, your coffee or whatever. And so you spend so much time talking about Adam Silver. I do think it's fair to say that if David Stern wasn't dead, but he was 40 right now, but it was basically David Stern cloned himself, right? Somehow Palpatine returned. David Stern's back. I don't think the 40-year-old version of David Stern would have seen the wisdom. It's just a move that they all have to make. This is what capitalism does. Like, they're just all checkmated in this way. Everything is sponsored by DraftKings and FanDuel and all the other places in the same kind of way. Some would say, I would never say this, of course, not publicly, but some have said that the reason that you have so many commercials for pharmaceuticals is not so much so you go to your doctor and say, give me Colastrafil or whatever they came up with. It's just so that everyone's corrupted by all these commercials. So if the news companies are running all these ads for all these drug companies, then the thought goes, of course, I would never subscribe to this, but the thought goes that, well, then really they're just buying off the news that Big Pharma has bought everybody through these ads. The ads are for influence peddling, not so much getting you to go buy the drug. You don't typically do that. That's what people say. And so if gambling, so that's interesting thing kind of one. If gambling companies own the Dan Le Batard show, own Pat McAfee, own all these other kind of places, there's only going to be, like, it's not like we can even particularly remember the names of the football players who got caught up in this. It's kind of whispered. They have to cover it for a couple of days and then it goes away. What's his name? The light-skinned dude on the Nuggets' brother got caught up in all this. And I wonder, obviously the story just broke 45 minutes ago. I wonder how much this too will sort of go away because Beasley isn't a big enough name. Right? So I'm for the conspiracy. The conspiracy of he tanked. I don't think there's any real evidence that I saw in real time that he tanked any games for the Bucks. And if you recall the Pacers series, Dame wins game 1 and a almost completely equal combination of Chris, Bobby, and Malik win game 5. And then we lose in 6. I think what we've learned through gamblers and other kind of things is that algorithmically, the reason that they caught the other guy and the reason they'll catch everybody, is because if all of a sudden there's a lot of heat, I mean, that's how they got Donaghy. Like, Donaghy didn't even really understand how much everybody was drafting off of his bet. So he's doing this for 7,000 a game or whatever it was. But once, like, the big fish and the mob and everybody else figured out they have a monster on the hook, then they're adjusting their gambling base. So there's millions of dollars getting moved. And that gets noticed. And that's before you get to the algorithm of it. Like, so if all of a sudden Malik Beasley over 4.5 threes, whatever the number will be, again, I don't follow gambling. I don't know anything about this. But if around number $10,000, dollars or units or whatever gets bet on that normally, and all of a sudden there's like millions of dollars worth of heat on Malik Beasley over under 4.5 threes, like, at this point, human beings don't even have to notice this. Like, the algorithm will notice this. So you can't really do it that way. And again, by the time I'm saying this and recording this, perhaps more information has come out of this, or it will get, like, maybe there'll be more, or maybe it'll get buried, or maybe it'll just be kind of talked about, and then it'll be kind of hushed, and maybe it'll be like a summer league topic of conversation or not. But I kind of suspect this story will go away because, again, much like certain pharmaceutical things that we could talk about, you need somebody to talk about it for it to be a thing, right? And they're not going to stop. There's no version of this. Like, the money isn't there. Like, kids aren't following sports like that. The money isn't there for the NBA in any meaningful way to divest themselves from the gambling companies, nor do they want to, right? Because they have an embedded growth principle. So that part's not going away. And no doubt some people listening to this would not want it to go away, and you feel like it's made your life following sports better. I'm just saying, like all things, they've just been checkmated with this. And there's nothing they can really do except throw the book on him or bury it or whatever. But so that part isn't interesting as much. And as much as so much of this is like the old days were better. I mean, yeah, sort of. But I think there are certain constants with human nature, and had this been available to Hank Aaron and Willie Mays, or Bill Russell or Jerry West or any of that group of guys who weren't any better or worse people on average than any of the rest of us, like all the same things would have taken place in greater number. And because there's no punitive aspect to it, like think about like my generation. This is 2 and 3 generations removed from everybody knowing about the Black Sox, because people used to have more integrity, or more integrity was forced upon them, however you choose to believe. But to wear the colors of the Chicago White Sox and represent your city and your side of town in that manner, and then just to throw it for money, was seen as such an unforgivable sin. And we don't even look at it that way. We don't even really expect that you follow the team in your city that kind of way. So everybody, like, sports are basically dead. And you can't put that genie really back in the bottle in any way. Like a bunch of the people, I saw multiple people on my timeline being like, all right, I'm going to go back to being a Blazers fan. Like when Dame gets hurt, multiple people are like, I'm going to go back to being a Blazers fan now. And I'm like, oh, you were always a Blazers fan? Dame fan? 1, 2, 3, 4? Oh, okay, cool. So there's no, we can follow whatever team we want. It's already kind of divested from the idea of it being a city thing or a state thing. And I think society just kind of moves on. So, I don't know. I guess that's my instant reaction. Like, it really is like The Godfather, where he was like, these other vices are fine, but if we get involved in drugs, it'll kill us. But they can't, again, this the same cycle. You can't turn down the money, but it's going to destroy the whole thing. What is kind of interesting, if you think about that iconic scene in Blue Chips where they catch what's his name turning the ball over. Ricky? Was it Ricky? Ricky, did you take money, Ricky? Even the idea of that scene in Blue Chips is kind of to reveal the hypocrisy, because of course it's 1991, so people feel like they should pay the players. I think that's kind of like low key. The hidden message of Blue Chips is they thought it'd be a great idea to pay the players, and we see how that worked out. But the idea, which was commonly stated throughout the 90s, is if the coach gets paid for his TV show and the coach gets a contract with Adidas or Nike or whatever, and the coach has all these streams of revenue, that it would be immoral not to pay the players. But then also, like, the players, the idea at that time was that you were unintentionally creating, you weren't just revealing criminals, that you were creating criminals by not paying players, forcing them to basically seek other sources of revenue just so they could eat. And the kind of unfairness of this, and especially the unfairness for a guy who blows out his knee and now basically has nothing. Also because he was too dumb to ever really be in school. So he's only in school to play sports. And you won't let him eat. You won't let him take a free meal from a booster. You won't let like people pick up his tabs or anything like that. And so you've basically got this indentured servant with perks, of a carnal nature, but that's essentially it. And so that was the argument for forever, that the hidden argument of Blue Chips is that everybody's corrupted, and so yada yada yada, right? But that scene in Blue Chips, I really wonder if there'll be a Malik scene, because the nature of the game is so terrible. Just chuck and chuck and chuck and chuck. Really, all he does, I guess what I'm saying is, he doesn't have to turn the ball over in a way. And yes, everybody immediately said, if Gary Trent threw that game, that'd be the craziest Shyamalan-esque plot twist of all time. I don't believe that happened either. I also don't want to believe that happened, because that'd be devastating. But yeah, I don't actually think that happened. But what does Beasley have to do? Beasley doesn't have to turn the ball over. Beasley just has to miss. Everybody expects that you miss. Everybody expects that Jason Tatum might go 6 for 10, but he might go 0 for 10. So it's also, on top of everything, well within the realm, because the state of coaching now is just to train everybody but the best player just to be just kind of a robot, just an unthinking, get the 3 shot up robot, that I think it also probably makes things easier to cheat in that way. And that's also kind of a shame. So it's probably something else to say. We'll monitor this, but this was always going to happen. Who's calling me? Hang on one second. Sorry about that. I had to take a phone call. So the only other thing I would say is also, if you're like the 7th best player on an NBA team, but you play some of the time, you're the 7th best player, you're the 10th best player. The other thing I wonder about is, do you consider prop betting on yourself, presuming that's what it was, and presuming this isn't just a humongous story of affecting the history of the league, presuming it's just prop bets and it's kind of what people say Pete Rose is, even though I'm kind of dubious on that. Let's say it's just that. Does a modern NBA player consider prop betting on yourself in much the way you might set a daily goal, right? And much as you say, I would imagine I'm going to sell 2 cars today if you work at a car lot or whatever. Or my goal is we're going to re-sign 3 contracts this week. And so for an NBA player who plays some of the time but not all the time, do you set little goals for yourself I'm going to bet on it through proxy or whatever? It shows just kind of the insidious nature of all of this. Because I can imagine myself being tempted to do a thing like that, right? Like, and whatever the prop, and because I would assume, again, I've never been on any of these sites, but I assume they're just infinite props. So it's like, you want to bet on your free throws. Can you bet that I'm going to go 100% on free throws? Or can you bet on the things that you're working on? I imagine all that's in play. And so that's kind of the other insidiousness of the gamification of this entire culture, is just that, like, how can they not? So that's at least more than 5 minutes. I'm sure there'll be more on this, but like, I just came home and this is all blowing up. So perhaps more later. The next time we talk, we're going to talk to Tresky about his book, and perhaps we've talked a little bit kind of back and forth, and perhaps the first time will be about the book, and then we'll circle back after I've read the book. I would encourage everyone to buy a copy of his book, of Jordan Tresky's Bucks book, about the history of the Bucks. You may say, I'm not that interested in the history of the Bucks, perhaps, or whatever. Like, support our guy. Buy 2 books. He will sign it for you. He'll take a picture. He'll do whatever. But I think it's important. Here's what I'll say about that in advance. There's a lot of people on the extended Bucks interwebs that we feel are grifters and these craven capitalists, and there's a lot of unlikable, unsavory characters on Bucks Twitter. Like, Jordan Tresky is a real one, and he's not one of those. And I think we should support his work. Go on Amazon, look up his name, buy the book, pre-order it, whatever, forget about it. Anyways, have a good Sunday. Zip it up, zip it out.